10 News Conference starts right now.
I'm Gene Valicenti. This is 10 News Conference from the State House, where we're catching up with the legislative leadership in the Senate and the House. Let's begin with the Senate, where Senate President Ruggerio and his leader Michael McCaffrey must deal with progressives coming in. Can we really all get along? Let's talk about these progressive. That's going to be your case to handle. And some of them go more than progressive. They're far left, almost radical. I'll say, you don't have to say that. You don't have to make enemies. But you've got this Tiara Mack coming in. I mean, she unseated Harold Metz, and she's coming in with an agenda. Did you see that picture she posted? Very fierce looking. Is she coming up here to fight with you? What would you say to her? You got to explain politics, how it works? This is a young person who has her own ideas about things.
Well, I think some of the people, some of the new people have this concern that we're not responsive to their issues. I don't think that's the case.
These really far left people coming in, I mean, it's almost like a scorched earth where they want to do business. That's not politics in Rhode Island. Politics in Rhode Island is, let's work together over here.
I agree with you on that statement right there. If you've been around long enough in the state of Rhode Island to see that legislation generally has to be worked through the process, and there's changes, the different input from different organizations, whether they're liberal leaning or conservative leaning, to try and make the legislation work so it gets through the process. And not everyone's happy, but the legislation gets through, and that's the important thing that works for the state of Rhode Island.
Legalizing marijuana. I know you've been against that in the past, but now the state is so broke, we could be facing another shortfall. Not this fiscal year, the next one. Is that going to be on the table as soon as you get back?
We've looked at that issue on numerous occasions. We've had substantial hearings on the issue. I mean, I've had some concerns about safety in the workplace. I've had some concerns about electric boat, the people that we have over here that are working at electric boat. We don't want to lose jobs in the state. But I'm also buoyed by the fact that the state just licensed a testing facility, the first one in the state. So I think that sort of helps me as far as my deliberations regarding that particular issue. So it seems like things are falling into place. I don't think the state did a great job with medical marijuana. I want to see a little more control over recreational marijuana. And I assign Leader McCaffrey and Chairman Josh Miller to look at the issue, to work together on the issue with the governor's people and with the House people, and see what we can come up with as a proposal.
Obviously, Massachusetts has it, and we're getting the sins of Massachusetts, and we've studied the issue, and a number of states have had it for a number of years. It's an issue that I think we have to accept, and as long as we put the right protocols in place with respect to it.
The car tax phase out. Now, Nick Mattiello is leaving us. But that he said I was the only one who was going to protect that. Is that vulnerable, Senate President, to being paused?
I have been a fan and a champion of the car tax phase out. I had two of the three communities with the highest car tax in the state at the time. It's improved vastly. I still would like to see the phase out. I love to cut taxes, but we'll have to see.
A couple of months ago, we were saying, oh, the budget hole is going to be $900 million. Unbelievable, unfathomable. That wasn't the case in the end. What was it, 175, $200 million to close for this fiscal year, and it could be the same for next fiscal year? That's much different than $900 million, isn't it? Is that a majority leader?
It's substantially different, but you have to give credit where credit's due to the Senate President and to the House fiscal team on what they did, as well as the governor's office. I mean, there are a number of things out there that continued to grow in the state of Rhode Island, even though we had the pandemic, which helped make sure that hole wasn't as big as it was.
Now, speaking of the governor, she's been running things, and there's been criticism. Now, you should have come back a lot earlier, Senate President. You let her run everything.
Well, we established a task force between the House and the Senate to monitor the spending of the stimulus money. I didn't see a reason to come back. The last thing I'm going to do is to bring my colleagues back, to bring my staff back here, have them get infected. I saw what happened in other states, Georgia. And you know what? I like my colleagues, but I don't feel like spending 14 days in quarantine with them.
I mean, I think we have to think of the health, safety, and welfare of all of our colleagues first.
Listen, the teachers have to go back. I went back. The grocery store workers went back. The cops and the firemen went back. Should you have a special exemption? I mean, you only meet once a week, if that.
We meet 3 times a week
Well,
generally.
I know, but under these circumstances, you could have.
But I mean, we have been doing services for our constituents. I've received more calls from people who have had problems with DLT in the last 6 to 9 months that is unbelievable. I mean, people trying to get in, they couldn't get in, or people receiving letters saying that they applied for benefits when they worked for hospitals and they've been working full-time and things like that. Just because we're not coming into this building doesn't mean that we're not doing anything.
Okay, so you let the governor run it, and that's an endorsement. She ran it. You're fine with the way she ran things, but yet I'm hearing almost every week from Lieutenant Governor McKee, she's hurting the small business people. She didn't spend enough. She did this, she did that. What's going on?
First of all, I think the governor was very cautious, and not knowing what's happening with this coronavirus from one minute to the next. I mean, how do you plan what's going to happen next month when you don't know where the virus is going at this point in time? She held back some money in the event of a surge, and I thought that was a good move. Obviously, we've had a surge, and we have to deal with that particular situation. She put out money for small business. She helped small business with grants and things of that nature. I mean, maybe she didn't do as much as people wanted at that one particular time, but I thought she responded well, and we supported her. And like I said, we have a task force that looks at all the expenditures. It's part House people, part Senate people, and we're pretty pleased from the reports that we got how the money was being spent.
Has your phone been ringing off the hook with restaurant people and gym owners and help me, I want some relief?
I've heard from a number of restaurant people, as well as a neighbor of mine owns a little gym, and the work that she's done on how she's explained it to try and protect people is unbelievable.
The Mattiello era is over. You were there for all of that, and now we have a new era coming in with Joe Shekarchi. What should I look forward to regarding Senate relations with the House? Sometimes they've been a little touch and go. Did you end up better with Nick Mattiello than you started?
Absolutely. We had a little dust up when I first got in. Obviously, it could have been handled better on my part, but at that time, Gene, I went down that road before. I remember when we initiated the car tax phase-out, and then we had to pull it back because of the economy. Yeah. And I didn't want to have that happen again. After that, things got a lot better, and I had a great relationship with Nick Mattiello going forward.
Now, how about Joe Shekarchi?
Joe, I've known him since...
He's been on the team. He's been on the leadership team. He's no stranger.
I have a great relationship with Joe. We worked on the budget we just passed. I think we're going to have a great relationship going forward.
This gets back to how we began the conversation. It runs a certain way up here. For better or worse, it runs day after day a certain way. You just confirmed a couple of judges for the Supreme Court. Some might say it's a little controversial. One came out of your body. Senator Erin Lynch Prada gave up her seat to become a Supreme Court justice. When I look at the list of names, I see people who might be more qualified than her. I certainly saw Lorene DeAmbra, who's been the advocate and on the court for many, many years. But we bumped Erin Lynch Prada right up to the Supreme Court. Is that how politics works? Is that fair?
We made history last week when we came into session and appointed Erin Lynch Prada to the Supreme Court, as well as Melissa Long. Now there's a majority of women on the Supreme Court, as well as we appointed the first African-American person to the Supreme Court.
Senate President, you know what I'm getting at. Are the best people getting on, or it's just the people that are going to get the job? For example, even Melissa Long, person of color, I get it. We want to put a person of color on there, but you could look at a list and say, is she the most qualified to get on? That's how politics works, isn't it? One hand washes the other.
That's the way politics does work, but first of all, let me say this. I think, and I'm not an attorney, I think Erin Lynch Prada was eminently qualified for that spot. I saw her work on issues that I never had seen before because I was not in the highest leadership capacity. I'm the one who made her the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and I don't regret one moment of it because the work I've seen her done, sitting down with people, and by the way, she's a practicing attorney, and one of the most difficult courts, a family court, and I just think she's a spectacular candidate. And also Melissa Long, she was a sitting judge at the time. I think she's eminently qualified, and I'm really pleased with the selections that we made.
Well, Melissa Long was pushed by the minority community. And in the wake of the summer of unrest, she really was pushed hard. That has a lot to do with it, doesn't it?
The governor liked her from the giddy up when she first appointed her.
Okay, enough of me challenging. Now, what do you want to talk about? for 2021? What's your big top agenda? What's your broad vision? What do you want to get done?
Obviously, we want to continue with some of the things we've done with justice reinvestment to see if we can keep the court system and the prison system moving in the right direction. I mean, I think we'll focus a lot more on the juvenile system to see what we can do there to address some of the issues early on before this juveniles end up in the either the training facility or in the ACI. In addition, we have a number of issues that we're going to bring back before us. We're going to do the ACA and pay equity and things of that nature. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the budget is going to be the biggest issue that we're going to address again next year.
We're looking at housing. Even before the pandemic, housing, we had a housing crisis in this state. We need, if you're going to build the economy, people need a place to live. So we're looking at a dedicated funding stream for housing going forward. We have a $65 million bond issue that'll be coming out probably in March of this year on a referendum. We're encouraging the people of Rhode Island to support that, along with the other bonds that we passed the other day for improvements to get stimulating the economy, get the economy moving, get people back to work, and then we'll figure out where we're going from there.
Well, the housing market is good if you want to sell a house. You're going to get top dollar more than maybe ever expected. But you're talking about affordable housing. You're talking about affordable housing, yes. And sports betting is going to get bigger with Twin River merging with Bally's. They're putting a lot of eggs in that basket, sports betting.
They certainly are. We're encouraged by that. We have a new director of the lottery that we just confirmed, gave the advice and consent the other day, and we're hoping that things are going to get a lot better. They're devising some new ways that they just started doing e-ticketing as far as instant games and things like that. We know there's a market in that. We just need to improve that, and especially now with a lot of people at home, they have the app. They can do what they normally do, but from home. So I think revenue from gaming, and that's our third largest source of revenue. I think that's going to improve vastly in the coming months.
And we'll also probably relook at the IGT contract since we didn't
that's unfinished business.
pass that. We passed it, but the House had concerns with that.
Up next, let's go to the House side. New leadership there. A new speaker plus a new majority leader next. Welcome back to the House side, where the new speaker is coming in, Joe Shekarchi. And as for marijuana, it will get a hearing, but not rushed. Is this going to happen fast?
No. The legislative process is a slow, deliberate process. We are open to it. We're going to listen to all points of view. There'll be hearings on the process. There'll be information from a lot of stakeholders, and we'll make a proper decision. I want to point out about marijuana, it's a two-step process. The first process is, should we legalize recreational use? And then the second process, a little bit more complicated, is how do we regulate it, and how do we sell it or dispense it, or who gets to sell the product? So that's going to require, at least from the House perspective, a lot of influence, a lot of information from a lot of different people and perspectives, and I want to hear what the stakeholders say. I want to hear what the medical community says. I want to hear what the advocates say for it. It is a hot issue, but will not be a fast issue. It'll be a slow, deliberate process. To me, it's much more important to do it right than to do it fast.
All right, Speaker Shekarchi, what's ahead of it on your agenda? What other items are up there with it? I'm going to put it right up there. I see it. There's a lot of pressure to pass it, but you tell me, what's on top?
Well, as always, the House number one priority always has, and I think always will be, the budget. We just finished the budget 2 weeks ago, actually a week ago, when we passed it unanimously from the Democratic perspective, so I'm proud of that. And that was not an easy thing to do. I think the budget next year is going to be a challenge, and of course, COVID is a major problem. It still hasn't gone away. It's still affecting our small businesses.
You know, there was a figure we were throwing around months ago, $900 million hole. It could be catastrophic. Never heard anything like it. It turned out to be just a fraction.
It was about $275 million.
And that could be another $275 in the next fiscal year, correct?
Or more. We don't know yet. But yes, it certainly could be. Budgets are estimates. Budget projections are estimates. You really need to look at the revenue conference when the House, the Senate, and the administration get together and their fiscal staff come up with it, and you have three different branches, and they give you their perspective, and they reach consensus on what that number is, and that's an actual number. And when we base our budget budget. Traditionally here in the House, it's based on the May revenue conference, not the November or the January one. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
It's not 900, but 275 is nothing to make light of. Leader, are there any sacred cows for you? Is there anything that's untouchable?
Well, I think Speaker Shekarchi and I are committed to having this be a member-driven legislature, and I think that's extremely important to us. We want to involve our colleagues.
Well, but is that car tax phase out in jeopardy? Is that something you might look at and put it in pause again?
We just passed a continuation of the car tax phase out last year. It was a week ago that we just did that to make sure that cities and towns can have predictability. But looking forward and seeing what the overall budgetary situation is, we're just going to have to look at every option. I don't think anything's off the table, and I think Speaker Shekarchi and the Finance Committee are going to take a close look at the entire budget, as I will, to find ways that we can close the gap that serves the best interest of the state.
So it's an honest answer. You've gone out of your way to say everything is on the table.
Always.
Is everything really on the table?
For me, it is.
I mean, everything?
Everything, Gene. There's nothing that's not sacred. I mean, obviously, things have more priority. It's what the members want, and I think it's irresponsible to say something or whatever that issue is untouchable, because that's predicting what the entire membership of the caucus says. I don't speak for everybody. I speak for Joe Shekarchi. I want to hear from everybody, and then I want to formulate a position that has broad basic consensus. I want to hear from the Republicans. I want to hear from the progressives. I want to hear from the moderates. I want to hear from every member who's elected, and I want to hear what their priorities are, and I craft something that hopefully reflects the majority of that. I don't expect to have unanimous. The system's not set up to have a unanimous consensus, but I want to work from that. And I also think you have other branches of government. You have the Senate and you have the governor's office, the executive branch. They have priorities. So by saying everything's on the table, what I'm saying is I'm willing to listen to everybody's ideas. And if you can prove to me that we shouldn't cut it or we should cut it, I'm willing to listen to you. I'm all about data and I'm all about listening.
And that would include layoffs of union personnel? That seems to be that's a sacred cow.
No, I don't believe that. I think that in the last budget year, before we passed this budget, the governor was talking about potential layoffs, and I think that she has a responsibility to put everything on the table, including aid to cities and towns, including all types of things, whether it's an early retirement program or whether it's layoffs or whatever it is. You have to be fiscally responsible. It is our role constitutionally to pass a balanced budget every year, and you have to look at everything.
Some unfinished business from the last session. The IGT Twin River deal. Where do you see that going? It's actually Bally's now. The Senate took action on that. Are we going to get that passed, Leader?
I think it's something we're certainly going to look at. I know the legislation had moved really far down the line last year, but we're taking a look at all legislation. That is a major piece of economic legislation that combines two major interests in the state. So I think Speaker Shekarchi and I want to be sure that we're completely comfortable with it, have really gone through the details, understand it before we move forward.
Do you like the big strokes? Let the two companies work it out. They stay in Rhode Island, everybody's happy.
I think overall, when you look at it, I think it looks like it could be a good deal for the state of Rhode Island and for its economy, but we have to make sure of that, and I think it's our responsibility to really dig in and make sure that legislation does what it says it will do.
Let me pull something out of the box, out of the hat. I was speaking to the ACI director a couple of months ago, and she said, at some point we're going to need new maximum security prison over there. That old Shawshank Redemption on Pontiac Avenue is both 130 years old or something like that. Does that enter into the conversation? Is there any money for something like that, or absolutely not? Needs to last another 130 years?
But something as big as that, and quite frankly, as controversial, that probably will take a session or two or three. So I'm welcome to begin that process, that education. I would like to look at alternative ways that we can do that. It's very expensive to house prisoners. I'm not so sure that we have to house everybody. However, I recognize that we have to house some people. So I'm willing to listen to that perspective, and I'm looking to look at alternatives instead of incarceration, because I think it's the way that you can rehabilitate somebody faster, but I also think we have to look at the taxpayer. It's pretty expensive to keep an inmate at the ACI, especially in maximum security.
All right, coming up next, more from our two guests. And no secret, one says he's more progressive than the other, but that they'll work together. Okay. Okay, so this leads me down a little progressive path now, because some of the far-left people coming in, they want to release prisoners from the ACI. I just saw a tweet on that the other day. This is the defund the police crowd. Now, you're known as a progressive, but I don't think you're that far-left. Defund the police, release prisoners. Where do you stand, Leader Blazejewski?
I think that people broadly support demilitarizing the police. I don't think people believe that we need to have a police force that has the full military gear that you see with our military abroad.
Okay, but you know what? When we had the riots over here this summer, we needed a militarized police.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, from what I saw, there was an evening where there were riots, and that is not good for our city. But there were also thousands of people that gathered very peacefully on the State House lawn.
It doesn't really matter how many peaceful people there were. There were people who set that city on fire. You could see that, Speaker Shekarchi. I don't see a problem with the police being militarized, do you?
I do not support defunding the police. I do support, and I won an award for it a couple of years ago, mental health first aid training for the police. And there's a lot of alternative ways we can look at things and do things. I'm open to all those suggestions, but by and large, I agree. I think we need a strong police presence.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the progressives coming in. They gained ground. And, this is a new era. But let me characterize you the right way, Leader Blazejewski. Where do you stand in the scheme of things?
Well, I think we're about, Joe and I are focused on consensus building.
Nothing to object to there. But when I hear some of these far left people coming in, and some of them are very young, and it almost seems like a scorched earth. Here's a picture of 3 legislators posing on the State House steps, and you can read the caption. That's Tiara Mack at the top. She's an incoming state senator. And that's a fierce pose. What am I to make of that?
They're young. I don't want to speak for the senators, but the representative is very young, and she got elected with, I'm sure, a lot of passion and a lot of different ideas. And this building has a way of moderating everybody's views, from the far left to the far right.
All right. So I'm going to interpret that a little bit. There's a learning curve here. We have a history of liberalism in Rhode Island. Senator Pell. But Senator Pell didn't pose like that and didn't have a scorched earth and my way or the highway, take the people's house back. Do you see what I'm getting at, Leader?
For me, I think it's a sign of that there's great energy in the Democratic Party. And it was that energy combined with lifelong Democrats that was successful on the national stage. And having new energy and new blood from the new reps that are elected, we have 14 new legislators, 12 of which are Democrats, and they'll come in and as part of the process, as Speaker Shekarchi mentioned, they need to learn to work together. And I think that that's something that inevitably happens up here. You need 38 votes, so you have to go out and meet your colleagues, get connected with them to put together the votes to pass the legislation that you care about the most. So I feel like it's great to have new energy up here.
You just approved in the House 2 Supreme Court justices, Senator Erin Lynch Prada, who's coming out of the Senate, going right through the revolving door, despite an Ethics Commission ruling otherwise.
I dispute that, by the way. The Ethics Commission ruled she was eligible, Gene. The staff recommendation was to say that she was ineligible. The commission itself does their own findings, their own due diligence, and they ruled she was clearly eligible for it.
I'll defer to you. You're a lawyer, and so are you, by the way. But you know how this plays outside of these walls? Well, they took a favorite, and they cut a deal. And I looked at the list of names. There were some very qualified people there. Laureen D'Ambra, child advocate, spent her time, paid her dues, and there were others who had a lot more judicial experience than Senator Erin Lynch Prada had. Is that just a cozy deal to put a friend there?
In this case, I was very proud to vote yes for both nominees. I thought Melissa Long was qualified, and I think Erin Lynch is qualified.
Let me push you a little bit more on that. How is she more qualified than some of those other names?
It's not necessarily of more qualified or not qualified. I think there's a certain bar of qualifications, and if you meet that, then it becomes a discretion of the governor.
Speaker Shekarchi, what's it going to be like with you in charge?
I need to be a little bit more collaborative. For me, Nick had, he was in the legislature more, he had more institutional knowledge of the building than I had. I'm going to rely on my majority leader and my chairman much more because I need their help. And I think Nick, quite frankly, just had a lot more experience at the job, and so he was able to make a lot of those decisions by himself, and they were good decisions. It's not a criticism of him. I need more assistance. I'm not afraid to say it or ask for it, and I'm going to look to my membership and unleash that creative talent I have in the House to help me.
Leader Blazejewski, take the last word.
This is a part-time legislature. And we need to rely upon the talents and background and experience of our colleagues. And I think we plan on doing that in this next legislative year.
And that's it for 10 News Conference this week. Thanks for joining us for the region's #1 and longest running political show. I'll see you next week. Have a happy new year.